Welcome back to Curse, Code, and Crown, a live play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition podcast featuring a fully original world and campaign. I am the wizard Cronox, observer of time. Curse, Code, and Crown features our regular voiceover artists and improvisers, Laura Elizabeth as the Orc Count Eta and Princess Gwendolyn, Tyler Hewitt as Makka Deathcap, and Ryan LaPlante as Duncan Danno, alongside our dungeon master, the incredible Tom McGee. So get ready for an adventure including thrills, chills, and hope for a brighter tomorrow. It's time for Curse, Code, and Crown!
Having just assisted Sylvia Tome, the science gnome, and her STARS team in defending their encampment against stray bolts that were raiding their perimeter fence, the science hero herself towers beneath you, because she's a gnome and she's shorter than all of you, but towers beneath you in her rock star scientist outfit. She's flipped her goggles up, wet cigarette hanging from her lip, and she's just demanded to know who the fuck you are and how the fuck she can pay you back. Around you, members of the STARS team are rapidly kind of like dealing with all the blown out speakers and gear. Sylvia's like rock cord of electric diffusion has blown out a lot of the equipment in the way that, you know, a properly strummed rock cord does. But none of them are doing it in a like there's no grumbling about like their gear being wrecked. This seems to be the purpose, and there's a lot of very casual, like kind of Star Wars junk trader stuff going on in the background. There's a lot of like, nope, broken, and just like throwing pieces away and replacing things where they can, as well as securing the tent against the elements. Duncan and Makka, you've made your way inside the tent as well. You've all kind of gathered up. There are you get the sense that everyone, a good way to think about the STARS crew is to think of them a little bit like astronauts. We talked earlier about them being sailors, but I think this is astronauts is a kind of a good mental model for this, because they all start like treating the wounded, but you can tell no one here is a doctor. Well, there's a bunch of doctors, but none of them are like MDs. So there's a lot of kind of field dressing, and a lot of like people have clearly been trained in first aid, but particularly to your eye, Makka, there's no medic here. This is just like, oh, if you got wounded in space, who would help you? Your fellow astronauts, and they would do the best they can. So immediately they set about healing again, just as a quick reminder, wearing green jumpsuits that seem to be somewhat, now that you've seen them up close, seem to have some degree of electrical insulation, which is how these folks held out for so long. Mix of goblins and gnomes, and very, very businesslike. Basically, because Sylvia is dealing with you, no one else cares. No one else is paying attention. Duncan, you get occasional like slaps on the back from people in kind of like a, you know, warriors who've just been through a fight kind of way, but they're not stopping what they're doing to do that. It's just, if they can get you on the way by, there's like little nods. Makka, you get the occasional like little thumbs up, because you kept Stabbo up and in the fight. And Eta, you get some workman-like nods from people as they go about their business, because you did manage to save the day when that coupling came loose. Your hair is currently like you've got the full like comedy frizz going on.
Awesome.
Which makes you look extra sciencey. So you know you're extra big in their books. Nevertheless, your hero stands before you, having asked a question and identified you as a good fan. Duncan, you can feel her eyes kind of like clearly like sizing you up, like darting up and down your body. You can tell she like her eyes keep shooting to your like chest and abs. And you get the sense that she is like trying not to check you out, but only at 50%. She's clearly not putting on too much of an effort to prevent this. As she like takes off her giant burnt out electric guitar, and starts like patting herself down for cigarettes. What do you do?
Well, he'll introduce himself. That's what Duncan does. This outfit is much more survivalist than his usual, but he'll still do the full kind of courtly, A polite bow kind of thing, but a little showier with use of his rain hat.
Sure.
I'm Duncan Danno, first captain of the Dawnbreakers. This is Ita from the Empire of Numbers and Makka Deathcap, the gravekeeper of the Tortles of Bleen. We'd really like access to the Spyros Observatory, if that would be possible. That would be a great form of repayment.
And she kind of laughs as she takes her like soggy cigarette out and kind of throws it away, and pulls a still somewhat soggy cigarette out of her pack, gives it like a death glare before popping it in her mouth. She says, "All right, so let me get this straight. We got Duncan Kin Handsome over here. We got World's Greatest Fan and Makka Deathkeeper of Bleen."
You may call me Makka Deathcap. That
Fair.
title is no longer befitting.
That's good. That's good. You know, accuracy is a great thing. A lot of us here, we got so many titles. We got to pick the one that's most appropriate. Like, you see, like Rick over there. Rick is actually a biologist, but who the fuck needs biology out here, right? So we just call him Doc right now. It's good. I like that. Makka, that's great. That's great. And World's Biggest Fan, Ida. You did fantastic work.
I mean, while we are going for accuracy, I do not know that I am your biggest fan. I am definitely in awe of all that you do, but I believe that is hyperbolic. And I am also a doctoral candidate. I have spoken to you before. I have seen you speak at the Apex Institute. This is... I mean, this is a lifelong dream of, well, I wouldn't say lifelong. I haven't known you my entire life, but my academic lifelong dream to meet you again and speak with you more than just, just in passing.
She smiles as she lights the cigarette, like clearly giving you time to ramble. And in the way that I think a lot of people at conventions do. But it's definitely in that, like, she recognizes how much it matters to you to get all of this out, so she's fully giving you time. She's also having a hell of a time lighting the cigarette because it's a wet lighter and a wet cigarette. And as you finish, she just smiles and says, "Wow,
I think Tyler's
Makka, I see a fingy."
Makka casts produce flame, just cigarette for her.
She great. She immediately just like flicks the lighter away and like winks at you. And then turns to Ida and says, "Wow, so beautiful, smart, and precise, and humble. That's a hell of a combination. We're gonna have a real problem here, I think, friendos. But till then, welcome. You're welcome to our tent. My name is Sylvia Tome, the Science Gnome, as you heard from my my yelling earlier. The bitch was obviously not meant for you guys. I just yell that when I need bitches to know that they shouldn't fuck with me and my crew. So I'm glad that the electrical bitches fucked off because." Science, right? Anyway, you're most welcome here. I'd introduce
Ida's kind of tilting her head, just like inquisitive, like this is odd.
Sylvia takes like a long drag off the cigarette and just like sighs in relief in the way that like I'm not a smoker, but I do love coffee, and it's the way that I feel when I haven't had a coffee in a bit, and I finally get that first sip, and I'm like, oh. Welcome back, drug. Get in me. And just a purple flame and sort of a little drift of a purple smoke comes off it. And she just says, "So, we're the my team here, and I we would love." Duncan Kin Handsome over there. We'd love to get into the Spyros Observatory ourselves. That's actually kind of why we're here. These folks, as I said, they're my scientific, tactical, active response squad. You can call them STARS. It's easier. We are here on a mission from Apex, as our smart and precise friend over here has indicated. And we are also trying to get into the observatory, but that's not quite the easy ride we all thought it would be. But hey, what's field work if it's easy, right? Bullshit. That's what it is. So we'd love to help you. Do you find folks have a key of some sort? I mean, looks like Makka over here has got some skills. You got my smoke going, which is fantastic. I understand, Duncan, you're out there mixing it up with Stabbo. Always impressive. He's one of our best fighters. Also incredibly good at equations. It's a strange combination, but we kind of like it. Did you guys figure out a way in? you're just having trouble getting over there? Like, what's the deal? What's going on here?
Well, we know there's some sort of key required for the structure, which we do not have, but we saw from the records of your crashed ship that you have some kind of improvised key.
And for the first time, her face falls a little bit. And it's a full, like Kate McKinnon frustrated, like kind of like almost Charlie Brown yell to the sky kind of deal. And she's like, yes. Okay. Well, good. Honestly, truth be told, I'd be a little bit pissed if you did have a key because we worked really hard on this thing. And if you just found one laying around, that'd make me feel like a real asshole. Yeah, no, we got one. But it got damaged in the landing, and we're actually not sure if there's power going to the station. If there isn't, then we can't really do much in there at all. So yeah, we do. And she kind of just gestures, and a goblin woman who is her arms in a sling, but she just kind of waves and brings over like a metal carrying case, sort of like you would. Like, any sort of like small tool case that's sort of padded and insulated. So, and she goes, someone didn't properly latch the Acropic case, and behold, and she opens it up, and inside there's a marvelous device. And again, Ida, we described the Empire as not leaning too heavily into like metal technology, but definitely into mechanisms. And I think for both you and Duncan, Makka, I don't think you give two shits what the key looks like. It's just a key. But Duncan, this thing looks like next level Orville. Like Orville is again fairly technologically advanced in terms of just the mechanisms that kept it aloft. But this thing is a marvel. You can think of it as kind of a small orb that has a variety of like small gimbaled arms, something that looks like a corkscrew, like a bunch of different pieces coming off of it. And at the center, there is a stone, a sort of a beautiful jagged crystal that is cracked and dull. But and you can see that there are like bits of the crystal kind of everywhere throughout the box. But Sylvia gestures to it and says, yeah, we call this the Acropic. Basically, like all we knew from the reports of people who had already failed to get into Spiros was that the locking mechanism requires a very specific key. And they looked around, and most of them died either in the attempt or had to abandon it. So we thought, fuck that. We'll just Gordian knot this shit, right? So why make one key when you could make all the keys? So this thing can open just about any lock that we've been able to find. We've talked to a bunch of dwarven artificers in some of the fortresses. We took this over to the Empire, and she kind of like gives finger guns to you, Ida. Says, we basically talked to as many people as we could to get us a sense of what kind of locks exist in the world, and then figured out ways to open it. So this thing should be able to open whatever is up at Spiros. But the power source was broken on landing. And unfortunately, it's not exactly something you just carry a spare of. That said, we think we may have found a solution to both of our problems, both the power source and to the tower, and the power source here to the Acropic. Before we went down, we picked up major mechanical readings just a little bit east of here. There's something there that is generating a ton of power, and at the very least, we hope to see if it's maybe the power source for the observatory itself, and ideally, if we can scavenge anything, they'll get the Acropic back up and running. As you can see, it's a mix of technology and magic, which means it's very, very temperamental. And unfortunately, without a magical power source, it's really not much use to anyone. So, as I said, we owe you one. The entire STARS team here does. And, we respect those who help out with the scientific method. And she kind of like points to your sword, Duncan, and says, and your scientific method was excellent at killing these living electrical creatures. So good method. If you want to come with us, we'd be happy to have the help. And more importantly, if we figure out a way to get up into the tower, we can all go together.
Well, I believe our goals are aligned, so I can't speak for my friends, but I'll be joining you in this quest to fix your Acropic.
She just smiles and says, "Oh, good."
But
You do know that it goes without saying that I will be helping in every way possible, yes.
Ida, dear, for one so precise as you, I would assume nothing would go without saying, but I'm glad you said it. And then she winks at you and takes a drag off the cigarette.
Ida does not know how to respond to this at all.
what is your goal in reaching this observatory?
She kind of gives you like a more solid nod. You get the sense that, and Makka, I think for you this would actually be pretty common, because people who kind of have airs about them have always made no sense to you. Just they take longer to get to a point. With Duncan, he always seems to get to the point while having flair, so it's kind of worked out. But you get the sense, and I mean, Ida, you would pick up on this as well, but I think you would pick up on it as like, no, like she's a rock star. Don't fucking ask. Like she obviously has her reasons. Like, don't worry about it. It's like going like Dr. Hawking. Hey, why are you curious about like the theories of gravity? And he's like, fuck off. Like there's no reason to ask him that, right? But she gives you a look, Makka, and Ida, you'd read this as frustration just on an academic level. But Makka, you can tell that you've broken her flow a bit, and this doesn't seem like an unreasonable question to you. Duncan, I feel like you'd probably catch this.
Yeah, Duncan would be watching her pretty closely. The only reason Duncan didn't ask is because he figures she'd probably lie and he'll learn more about behavior. But Makka is actually the perfect foil for Duncan to be able to observe behavior without being the instigator, which is his favorite tactic.
So can you roll me a... I feel like this falls under perception, but I don't know if that necessarily feels right to me. But
Insight? If it's
I would take insight. Let's go. Yeah, I'd say insight or perception. Insight does seem like the right. Let's go with insight. Yeah,
it's a 6. Fuck me.
6. Okay, I mean, even with a failed check, like you're not like just like closing your eyes and like pulling your shirt up over your head. You still observe it, but unfortunately, I think you're. We'll say that you get distracted in the moment by like there's a yell that kind of just like draws your attention because of course as someone who's like always vigilant. So you whip around and you see that Stabbo has woken up quite suddenly and is like flailing around a bit. And then he sees you in a big, like he's got like a hockey player's smile. So just like missing a bunch of teeth. Big grin. He just leaps off the table, like trailing bandages, runs over and just leaps up and gives you a hug, being like, "My brother! We made good science!" So while you're being hugged by the excited goblin berserker, you unfortunately miss this interaction. She looks back to you, Makka, and just says, "Look, that's a fair question, of course. But this place is fascinating, wouldn't you agree? Weather doesn't work the way it's supposed to here. And I mean, and she just kind of like quickly glances, like looks you up and down a little bit more seriously. She's like, what, you're, actually, fuck it, I'll just roll for her. Yeah, she gets it. It's like, you deal in what, spores?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, fantastic. So you're tuned to the natural world. None of this is natural. Am I right, Turtle Man?
Yes, you are correct. I have been seeking balance in a number of different ways. And it seems throughout my travels I have found that Gren is out of balance in almost every perceivable way.
And she just kind of gives you like a solid nod, and a bit of the frostiness kind of melts. And she just kind of goes, yeah, that right there. This place, this whole world, it's chaos. It's chaos and madness. And yeah, I mean, sure, people say it's fine. And like it was better off than we were with the Necrotus and all that shit. But it's chaos, right? This place is chaos. I don't like chaos. At least not chaos I can't understand. So me and my team are here to figure out why the rain is falling upward, why the storms don't work anymore, and to figure out what this place was. I feel like people tapped into something here they didn't understand, and they just started using it. And look, I get it. People are curious. That's at the heart of what me and my team do, but we're also at the heart of making sure that we know exactly what we're tapping and why, so we don't end up with some kind of crazy fucking eternal storm valley just because, I don't know, someone prayed to the wrong god or flicked the wrong switch. Am I right? So that's what we're here to figure out. We got to figure out exactly what this place is and how it works.
I, too, then, will aid you in this.
Phenomenal. Ida, can you roll me an insight check, please?
Yes.
At disadvantage, if you would.
Disadvantage. God damn it.
Starstruck.
That's a 12.
12. All right. This seems fully reasonable to you. It's also not an unreasonable statement. Like, she's not like, I don't know, for funsies.
Yeah.
Yes, this all tracks. Duncan, you turn back just in time to see Makka like agreeing. Stabo has begrudgingly agreed to go back and get patched up. But you get the sense you may have accidentally made a friend for life.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'd be pretty okay with that. Like, Duncan's not above other warrior types, even if they're weird. Plus, he doesn't know a lot of goblins. This is kind of exciting for him because generally everyone has looked down on humans so intensely. This is just a big win. So I think, yeah, he'd be excited. Like, he would have had that passing moment of like, yes, we'll do more science together and peers will be joining you. And he turns back to see Makka agree and he's like, and so will Makka, which is good. He just kind of says to himself, not sure how that convo could have gone.
Great. Yeah, and Stabo's like, all right, good. Well, if you guys aren't running away just yet, he coughs up some blood. He's like, I'm gonna go lay down again. Yeah,
we'll see you in a bit, friend. You go.
Sounds PG. And he stumbles back and he's like, all right, you can start rapping again. And just holds out his little goblin arms and they go back to like wrapping him up.
I would like to administer medical treatment wherever it seems most urgent.
Okay, great. Can you roll me a medicine check? This isn't to administer the medicine, because we know you're good at that. This is, in fact, to get by the science people, because I feel like if a giant turtle covered in spores comes by and is like, I could heal you, they'd be like, I don't know. I didn't read about that in the manual, so no.
So my PDF, for some reason, the numbers in my skills are getting smaller and smaller every time I update them. So what I thought was a +5 in medicine is actually a +8, which is great. Upon zooming in immensely.
I was going to say, so I guess we just now know that like Makka's like clock is ticking. Like the powers of Jossie are fading smaller and smaller upon your sheet.
Say, Tyler, have you been accidentally just typing a new number and they've been getting longer so they get smaller?
No, because I fully like empty the space. I'm like, okay, nothing's here. Push a number in. And it's even smaller than it was before I emptied it. So that is a 22 medicine check.
Are you sure you don't want to enhance? Oh, it's an 82. My God, this roll. Okay, how do you convince the science types? Again, they're like, you can see, Makka, the medicine they're administering is fine for a field treatment, but it's not good medicine. It really is the equivalent of like, I'm gonna pour some hydrogen peroxide on an open wound and then like wrap it and be like, you're good, buddy.
Yeah.
So how do you
paramedics, not doctors, if we were to use a medical reference.
Yeah, or like, someone on the side, like not the doctor who rushes the field when an athlete goes down in like, say, soccer, but just like one of the linesmen who's like, here you go, pour some water on it. All right, you're good. And they're like, yeah, I guess I'm fine. So like not even apparent, like just keep going down. We'll get there eventually. It's just like me with a first aid kit being like, I played video games and I just like bash you with it until your health is up. How do you convince the science folk who are kind of giving you that hoity-toity eye that only people who consider themselves brilliant professionals can?
I don't think I say anything. I think it's just purely like I provide an example. Makka has his herbalism kit. He would likely have a number of like poultices and things like that. And I think he just sees someone with like a bad like electrical burn, and he just smears some like pulverized like vegetation that immediately like soothes the burn and like provides like a nice cooling sensation. And like the gnome or goblin like speaks for themselves and be like, oh my God, that's so much better.
Literally everyone stops what they're doing and turns to look at you. And then all the people who were doing the treating come over and start like rolling up their sleeves in their pants and like showing you where their electrical burns are.
Like, we have evidence.
And they're all like, help us now. And all the people who are legitimately wounded are kind of like, yay. So Makka, you spend some time healing people up. And yeah, I think likely not even leaning on your actual spells so much, but literally just being able to administer aid. And yes, you leave the stars in pretty good shape. We'll say you have a bit of downtime. Obviously, because they pitched a tent, the stars team was actively aware that they couldn't just like bulldoze through. So you do have some time to rest up. If there's any questions you have for Sylvia or the team, you can ask those. But we'll say it's like it's basically going to take them like, now that they've fired off the field, you should actually have a little bit of safety in terms of movement for the next little while. So they're packing things up, but it's going to take them a while to recover as much of the gear as they can before moving on. So time for a short rest if you want it. You can spend hit dice, regain things if you need to regain things if you can, but also you can ask a couple questions.
I think Makka would just
baby.
Yeah, Makka would want to know where we're going. If that means speaking to what's her name, Sylvia, or if there's somebody else who's kind of leading the expedition.
Sure. Yeah, we'll say there's a navigator. She's a kind of a mousy looking gnome. Whereas a lot of the other ones are kind of hardy and hale. Think like a Judy Greer shrunk to gnome size.
Mm-hmm.
It is clearly like less enthusiastic about everything that just happened. You can see that she's kind of trying to put back together like a map station, and you can see that she has what is clearly an incorrect map, but a pretty good estimation as far as you can tell from approaching. So she's just looking at a map. There's the observatory. It's similar to the 3D model you saw back at the clinic, but as done by someone who didn't have access to that. But basically, you can obviously tell where the observatory is, and then it would seem that you are just a little bit northwest of the observatory, and you're headed to kind of the far northeast. Is the area she has charted. She's also marked the crash site behind you, as well as you can see she's created like a dotted line coming off of it to represent where, like, as the ship went down, they lost gear. So she's kind of just marked the rough path of that, which tracks with the crash site as you observed it. Notably, the clinic is not on here. But they're clearly aware of it because they sent out communications, and you can see a bunch of coordinates. Like, she's got proper navigational coordinates charted out. The whole thing's on a grid. Like, it's as reasonable an approach you could take to uncharted territory as you could take. And she's working away on that.
Okay. Makka will gesture to our destination on the map and say,
"What is it we are expecting to find at our destination?"
And she kind of jumps a little bit as she turns and says, sorry, I wasn't expecting you. Yes. Very good. We were able to pick up some readings on the cloud skimmer. Unfortunately, a lot of our diagnostics were interrupted by being struck repeatedly by lightning, as you know, you do. However, we were able to determine that there seems to be a large concentration of mechanical processes occurring at this site that we've marked here to the east. There are bad winds in this vicinity. We had to dodge several swirling funnel clouds on our way in. However, it would seem that whatever these mechanical devices are there and are giving off a tremendous amount of power. They actually made some of our instruments go haywire, which is good news for us now, but was tremendously bad news for us then.
These mechanical devices, they do not belong to you.
And shakes his head, says, no, Apex has mostly stayed away from this particular site for quite some time. There was no particular reason to come here other than to study it, but the early expeditions sent after whatever the anomaly was that caused all of this did not return, and the losses were considered too costly for us to invest further in them until the STARS team was deployed a day and a half ago.
You suspect these are the mechanical remains of your countrymen?
She stops to consider that, and she says, it would be incredibly strange if they were. All of our Apex frequencies were open, and yet we received no communications upon any of them. But it is not impossible, nor is it impossible that perhaps Apex technology is being used here, which is concerning, for if it was, we would have to recover it. After all, the cost of such gear would certainly help pay for the expedition, and given the destruction of our cloud skimmer, we will be rather on the hook for the incidentals, as it were. Yes, it would be good to recover these. This is a good thought. Thank you. You're very good at this. I greatly appreciate your insight. And then she also just sits and stares directly at you, also not really knowing social cues for the end of a conversation, and instead just not being sure if you have more to say.
He's also not sure if she has more to say, so you just look at each other for a while.
Yeah,
the silent standoff.
Yeah. But like the most pleasant silent standoff. Like there's no tension in it. It's just literally two people.
He's not
just
uncomfortable,
standing there staring at each other in pleasant, like input required way. Great, Ida. Is there anything else you would want to do in the field tent?
I think I would want to approach Sylvia Tome and just ask her. Oh, because I mean, she obviously has some theories about what's going on, or at least the general direction that she thinks things are playing out, and only because she's aware that this is unnatural and must have evidence to support that. So I think, Ida will just go up to her and say, excuse me, Dr. Tome?
Oh, yeah. Hey, what can I do for you?
I wonder what your hypothesis is at the moment, your current working hypothesis, or if you have one. Are you simply maintaining an open mind? Are you gathering information? What is your approach here?
Also, I should say, Duncan, if you want to get in on any of these, you certainly can. I feel like you're probably also a questiony person, so if you would be lurking nearby, feel free to insert yourself into any of these if you want.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think destination-wise, honestly, Duncan, a lot of boxes have already been checked. The only question he has is in terms of the Danno stuff, and he would wait until the other conversations are there. So I imagine he's probably hanging closer to Sylvia to overhear what's being said with Ita.
Sure.
Because he's also suspicious of this group.
Gotcha.
He doesn't know what they actually want from the storms, whether they're trying to create weapons, whether they're just planning to loot the friggin' place. Like, Apex is on his list of top possible suspects. So, Ida's thrilled. Makka's neutral because Makka's neutral. And Duncan is suspicious, but willing to admit they may not be evil.
Gotcha. Okay, great. So Sylvia turns back to you, Ita. And she says, actually, that last one there. Some of the best sort of meteorological minds at Apex have come up with all manner of theories about the Valley of Eternal Storms. And there have been, I'll tell you, some crazy debates, real fun stuff, lots of yelling, some broken glass at one point. Someone had to get stitches. It was quite an afternoon meeting. But no one can come up with a proper theory of this because Apex has not been willing to invest in an actual scientific party since some of our early expeditions failed to return. This is bad. This is bad science, just mindlessly speculating about a place based on casual observation from a distance. It's a bunch of empirical nonsense. It means nothing. So it took some convincing, and unfortunately, my team and I had been deployed to some other higher priority events. However, it seems that I have finally got through to the eggheads above me, who keep their fingers in the books. I mean, you're from the Empire; you understand how careful finances are.
Yes, as they should be.
Agree to disagree. But we finally managed to convince them that determining the nature of this was beneficial. Ida, can you roll me an insight check, please?
Yep.
And I guess, Duncan, if you eavesdropping?
Yeah.
Can you roll me a stealth check first, please?
Sure.
I got a 13.
13, okay.
Stealth is a 22. Insight is a 7.
Okay, well, you're successfully eavesdropping and hearing very little. So, Ita, the way she's talking about this, you're noticing that she's very specific about a lot of things and then is just leaving out a step.
Yeah.
And it's just the like, here's a bunch of very sound reasons why we couldn't come before. Oh, and then I guess they just decided we could come. Doesn't sit particularly well with you. What you choose to do with that is up to you.
I think she just goes for it. Yes, but I still don't understand exactly how did this change come about? Why? I mean, why now?
Can you roll me a persuasion check?
Yes. 7.
And Sylvia just kind of leans forward and winks and says, well, you know, when you're Sylvia Tome, the science gnome, sometimes doors just open for you. So here we are. And then she just smiles and like pats you on the arm and then goes back to sciencing.
And Ida just kind of puts her hands up and says quietly, but the doors were closed.
It's a fair point.
So quick question, just as Duncan, he's actually just been bandaging himself, so it's not so much stealthy in the sense of hiding as it is just in managing to make himself go unnoticed. And he's like, we've seen a lot of items, crates, other developments that involve the House of Danno and a variety of different logos and styles. Do you know anything about this house?
And she kind of like legitimately looks surprised and says, well, you said your name's Danno, right? I kind of thought maybe those were yours?
They're not, but they may be related to, shall we say, a distant relation that I knew nothing about before I arrived.
Well, I mean, we saw a couple of shattered crates a while back that just said, Danno core, but that was it. They were empty, and also the wood was not of a particularly good quality, which I guess explains why the crates were shattered, as it were. But no, we didn't pay it too much mind. I mean, from what we understand, historically, people came here all the time with shit to grow it and such. So I just assumed it was left over from that or from another expedition, as we understand from some of the distress calls that have been picked up by some of our nearby beacons. People like to come in here and try and loot the place and die a lot. So we just assumed it was someone doing that. But I guess it's your uncle or something. I'm sorry to hear that. That sucks.
Oh, it's centuries past. Yeah, no, it'll just be a little bit of a, shall we say, a side mystery for me on the case of this journey. I'll see what I can discover.
Oh, all right. Well, hey, I mean, look, we'll keep our eyes open too. Obviously, more eyes, more evidence is always good. And who knows if it's tied into all of this, then it's worth us knowing too. So we'll help you where we can. On that note, I notice that at least the two of you. I don't know if your turtle guy over there wears clothes or not. But I noticed none of you are wearing anything particularly insulated. Look, I'm happy to try and get you into the observatory, but I feel like I owe you more than that. So before we kind of venture out into what's probably going to be a worse storm site, and she kind of like claps briefly, and a couple of gnomes come out with a rucksack. And they zip it open and they pull out some jumpsuits that have been kind of rapidly modified to the point that they're more like think of them almost as flak jackets. So it's not like a full suit. Obviously, you guys also aren't the shape of anyone on this ship, but they've kind of patched together vests. So it's sort of like bulletproof vests. And she's like, "Behold, gifts of science," and then a bunch of other people echo it for her, so it sounds more dramatic. and says, "These are made of the same material as our jumpsuits here. It's insulated. It won't give you too much, but it'll give you at least some protection against these electrical. What you call them, bolts?
Correct. That's been our colloquial term for it.
I like that. That's better nomenclature than sentient electrical aberrations, which is what we've been going with. It's a real mouthful. So fuck that noise. Let's go with yours. Give you some protection against the bolts at the very least. My gift to you, thank you for helping us. I hope you like green. It's the only color we got.
This gift is greatly appreciated. Thank you, friend.
So the vests are, again, kind of jury-rigged because they had to like cut the suits out. You can tell that the suits are double layered. There seem to be some like wires and other things in between them that they've had to kind of like move some outside, and there's some weird patch jobs. So they do look kind of shitty, but they'll do the job. They give you 5 temporary hit points against electrical.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
So they give you that. Once those 5 hit points are expended, you can think of this almost like a Halo shield. Once those 5 hit points are expended, they'll be expended for the rest of combat. But if you're able to like take a breather, you don't even need a full rest. It's just like literally if there is time between encounters,
cool.
It'll refresh right quick. It just can't when it's under duress.
Yeah, so to borrow the term from another one, it would be with a scene of rest in between combat.
Yes, 100%.
Cool.
Yeah. Even if it's like we're running up the stairs, we stop for a second at the bottom of the stairs before we bust into the next room. We're still in initiative order. That's fine. It's just whenever you have breathing space, it can recover. And if you're really fucked up, you can also actively be like, I run away and hide so my shield will come back. That's we can play that out. We'll just probably roll for it. Makka, yours is likely. I don't know. It's probably still a vest, just like a real big and billowy one.
It's like almost a harness.
Yeah, it's more of like a tunic almost, but cinched off. Because the other thing is, of course, it's meant to buffer electricity, so if it doesn't sit flush to you, it's kind of useless. They kind of they harness you in. You've got those, and once you're all in, they show you like there's a mechanism on it to activate them. It's just like a little knob. So crank it on, click it shut, and you kind of hear like a as they power up. And I think Makka, for you, it's a little bit uncomfortable hearing. I think the other two would probably ignore it because particularly for you, Duncan, you grew up in Orville where like there was just this quiet hum all the time. But Makka,
the quiet flapping of giant wings.
Exactly. As a naturalist guy, it's real odd having kind of like a hum buzzing. You feel a bit safer at the very least, which is nice. And sure enough, as they're going to leave the tent up because there's like it's heavy. So kind of like packing a lot of the gear as like we'll leave some of the gear here, we'll move some of it forward, but you can tell it's a leapfrog operation back to the ship. Otherwise, they seem pretty much ready to go. Any final preparations you would want to take before you head into the stormy east?
Duncan's geared up and ready to go. He's got nothing special for this.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything.
Okay, great. So with your new Stormweave vests and of science and the gear packed up, Sylvia kind of like shrugs the guitar over her back and kind of like nods and they pull the tent down, just kind of turning it almost more into a tarp over the gear that they're leaving behind. And sure enough, the wind whips you as it comes out. You can see there is sort of scorched burn marks everywhere from kind of where the electricity dissipated. But sure enough, for the first time since you've arrived, since you left the clinic, actually, you've got an open field. There's no lightning blasting down around you. You seem to legitimately have some space. And as Sylvia, her like long coat flaps out behind her, she kind of flicks her goggles down. The butt of the cigarette just kind of starting to soak to nothing, and sort of spits it out over her shoulder and says, "Well, all right then. You guys ready to go do some science?" And there's a cheer from the crowd as the three of you kind of look to the horizon where you can see massive funnel clouds touching down at your destination.
This episode of Curse Code and Crowd Sound was mixed and edited by Laura Hamstra, and the campaign was created by Tom McGee. Our original theme music was composed by Landon Knoblock, and Curse Code and Crown's logo was created by the brilliant Decapitated Markers. If you want to follow our players or our DM on Twitter, you can reach out to Laura at EL Hamstring, Ryan at the Ryan LaPlante, Tyler at Tyler_Hewitt, Tom McGee at McGeeTD, or you can message our whole company at Dice. So please, join us again for more Curse, Code, and Crown!
Dum-Dums and Dice has to give a special thank you to the supreme beings of our Patreon at this time. Christian Menicola, the Half-Blind Prophet. Christopher Little, Sue One, George Dolby. One True Artistry, Orion Birchfield. Lord of Bradovic, Noel Lewis, Scott Garland, Anthony Griffin, Benjamin V, Gavin and Abby McDonald, Cade Peters, Richard Cranium, Anna Zed, Eric Williams, Logan, Fire Unfriendly, Acrix, Cameron Ezel, Grandma Likes D&D, Alan, Austin Nut Powers Fry, Stabby Stranger, and Jill and Noel LaPlante. If you want your name to be added to this list, you can join our Patreon too at patreon.com/dumdumdice. Thanks to them, and a little bit of thanks to you.